isn't military action now the only option?
Of course not. They could do all kinds of public diplomacy, but there's been no attempt to be diplomatic and talk about this. It's an absolute, aggressive action by the Western powers, by the NATO forces. It's about arms sales, and it's about making sure that there's no popular uprising in Libya or across the region.
Aggressive action from the West, but supported by the Arab League, by Libya's neighbours. Isn't that significant?
You can buy off anyone you want in this world if you have enough money.
And what about then the fact that there's a lot of debate over whether this allied action is to overthrow Gaddafi or indeed to save human lives? Whatever the outcome, the result's going to be welcome, isn't it?
Well, President Sarkozy from France has said today the Libyan people must be able to choose their own destiny. And after these attacks by the French and the United States, 110 Tomahawk missiles and the French air attacks, then we can return to diplomatic activity. There was no diplomatic activity. This is an absolute war of aggression. It's just another war, and the world should really be frightened about the nature of NATO and American power and attacking their own dictators.
But isn't this not a rebellion by the people of Libya? Isn't this what they want after a dictatorship of over 40 years? And they've asked for help and they're getting it.
Well, there's a popular uprising component to the uprising or the rebels' attacks in Libya, but there's also genuine dissidents, but there's also Islamic radical proxy forces that were backed by the United States during the Cold War. And there's CIA-backed forces, the Front for the National Salvation of Libya. These are also part of the so-called rebels, and they're backed by other Western agencies like the National Endowment for Democracy, who works subversively there. So this is really a very manipulated so-called conflict. The people of Libya, the real, true, free, popular uprising people of Libya are going to suffer the most, and it won't be very long once they get done with Gaddafi before the people, the true popular uprising, realizes that they have no control over their country because the United States and France and Italy and Britain have moved in again.
How soon will all this be over? There is some concern that this could end up as another protracted conflict, what we're seeing in Afghanistan, Iraq, but surely this is all going to be over in a matter of days. With all this coalition might against Gaddafi, he's not going to last long, is he?
Not unless you get some serious backing from someone else, and that's the unpredictability that someone, I think in your program earlier, was speaking about. Algeria, it's uncertain what could happen with the Arab world, the true, Arab people that have supported Gaddafi. He does have some small revolutionary support, and there's a lot of people in the world that like what he has to say against imperialism.
If Gaddafi does eventually go, and bearing in mind your comments earlier about this Western intervention, how do you see the future for the country? Can you actually draw parallels with past conflicts where we've seen similar intervention that we're seeing in Libya?
Well, as I say, I believe that it may be over quickly, it may not, but in the end, the United States and Britain and NATO, with their military might, will prevail one way or the other, crush any popular uprising, which they've already, partially done by letting Gaddafi roll over those rebel forces for a while. That was a tactic by the United States. And it can get Gaddafi to kill some of his own people, and then we can justify attacking him. And this is the extent of this hypocrisy by the West. It's so thick that it practically drools.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed, Keith Harmon joining us live there in the States. Thank you for your analysis on the situation there in Libya.